It is a very great honor to receive the BBA Foundation Frontiers of Knowledge Award. Thank you. My connection with Spain and Spanish economists goes back to the very start of my education in economics as a master's student at the London School of Economics. The program I was on at the LSE had more Spaniards, including Basques, than Brits. I came onto the program by accident. I was in my mid-20s, working as a line manager in the Scottish telephone service, when my elder brother David, who sadly died much too young, was completing his doctoral studies in physics at Stanford in California. I always looked up to David. He was over 2 meters tall, so I had to stand on a chair to look him in the eye. Sibling rivalry kicked in big time when he was offered a faculty position at the University of Oxford. My meager CV had a plain undergraduate degree in mathematics gotten some years earlier, so I scrambled to catch up academically by enrolling on a postgraduate course in political thought at the LSE, much to my parents' dismay. They thought I had a secure job in the telephone service that I should hang on to. It soon became evident that political thought and I had very little in common, and I was left stranded at the LSE without a clue what to study. Someone suggested econometrics. It seemed a suitable choice given that I'd previously studied mathematics. But it turned out that I had even less in common with econometrics than with political thought. To my shame, I thought econometrics was just inverting matrices. So, where should I go? A master's program in economics beckoned, specifically the unfortunately titled MSc in Mathematical Economics. It should have been called the MSc in Economic Theory. The level of mathematics ranging from usually modest high school to rarely quite fancy depends entirely on the requirements of one's theoretical model. One shouldn't be studying mathematical economics for its own sake. The trouble was that I had absolutely no background in economics. A newly appointed professor at the LSE, George Akerlof, who was an inspiration to me, was shocked to discover someone in his class who knew literally no economics. He told me to go to the library and dig out a book, any book on economics, and look at the pictures for a diagram of a market with a demand curve and a supply curve. This I did. I stumbled on a book on exhaustible resources. And given today's climate crisis, I wish I'd read it more thoroughly. I couldn't get over the fact that price was on the vertical axis and quantity was on the horizontal. It seemed to me that they were on the wrong way round. So I turned to my newfound Spanish friends on the MSc to ask them to explain why was price and quantity on the wrong axes? And more generally, what the heck was going on in this market? Being Spanish, they were first extremely well educated, and second, extremely courteous, patient, and generous with their time. One of the Spanish contingent was Rafael Rapullo, who not only became a major figure in the economics profession, but also the creator and longtime sustainer of what must surely be one of Spain's finest research institutions, SEMFI in Madrid. SEMFI is one of the brightest jewels in the economics firmament worldwide. And the creation of this lies entirely with Rafael. Of course, none of these future triumphs were known at the time Rafael was at the LSE as a master's student holding the hands of another master's student, me. Rafael outshone all of us in his studies. I think he achieved an eye-watering average mark of over 95% across all his papers, and went on to do such dazzling research that the LSE hired him as a tenured faculty even before he had completed his doctorate, something unheard of nowadays. It was not only my enormous good fortune that Rafael dragged me through my studies, but also that he and I later collaborated on the design of economic mechanisms. By then, he had returned to Spain to establish SEMFI, and much of our research was done in the central bank building in Madrid, or more often, scoffing avocados with pine nuts in our favorite cafe nearby. They were wonderful times. The work we did back then has, I hope, stood the test of time, and it is a fitting public sign of our friendship. I'm so delighted that Raphael and his wife Angela are here today. To be coming back to Spain feels like coming home, academically and personally. To the extent that I've had any good ideas about economics, they've been fostered on Spanish soil and nurtured by Spanish cuisine. The other person I would like to give great tribute to is my fellow recipient of the BBVA Foundation Award, Nobuhiro Kiyotaki. I've described how I learned economics from Raphael. It would be more accurate to say that I learned microeconomics from Raphael. Back then, Raphael and I, quite inappropriately, and in my case with shocking ignorance, rather looked down on macroeconomics. Only years later did I find myself in the hugely lucky position of having an office next to Nobu at the LSE. Nobu is one of the world's great macroeconomists and was visiting at the LSE at the time. Towards the end of his visit, I happened to run out of materials for my undergraduate topics course. And I cheekily asked him if he had written anything that I might teach. He humbly produced his paper with Randall Wright on money, a masterpiece. My students loved it, and I loved teaching it. I went back to Nobu to thank him and tentatively asked him if anyone had tried to embed credit into his kind of model. And out of that chance encounter has grown 30 years of collaboration. Nobu has taught me macroeconomics in much the way that Raphael taught me microeconomics, with the kindness of a wise father bestowed on a wayward son. Without David, Raphael, and Nobu, I would probably have gone back to telephone maintenance with my tail between my legs, albeit with my parents' approval.